It's New Year's Eve, and you plan on becoming a completely different person. You start envisioning the brand new person you want to become and get that burst of motivation that gets you going. But shortly after, you find yourself falling back into your old habits, and far away from that person you envisioned you'd become. How do we break free from these bad habits, and start to make room for all the good ones? This question is answered by James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits. What is the value of 1% changes? How to focus more on systems rather than goals? How identities are more important than outcomes? What James Clear calls the 4 laws of behavior change. Welcome to Business Simplified. Imagine an airplane set to fly from Los Angeles to New York. If the trajectory of the plane was shifted by just 3.5 degrees south, you will land in Washington, D.C. instead of New York. Such a small change is barely noticeable at takeoff, but when magnified across the United States, you end up hundreds of miles away. The same as with our habits. A slight change in your habits, whether for the better or worse, may seem insignificant now, but could completely change the path of your life much later. This is the importance of 1%. Do the math. 1% better each day for a year will compound to nearly 37 times better. We regularly convince ourselves that success requires massive action, but that's not the case. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. That's why it's difficult for people to stick with new habits. You start practicing that habit, but when you fail to see any results, you decide to give up. Progress isn't linear. This beginning stage of forming new habits is called the valley of disappointment. Habits often appear to make no difference until you cross a critical threshold. Remember, what matters is whether your habits are putting you on the path toward success or failure. Focus more on systems rather than goals. We've all been told the way to achieve anything is to set specific, attainable goals. And sometimes it works, but most of the time we fail. So, what went wrong? The problem isn't the goals you are setting, but the systems you are using to achieve those goals. The secret to forget about the goal and focusing on systems instead. How? In any sports, the goal is to win. But it would be ridiculous to spend the entire game staring at the scoreboard, because staring at the score won't change it. You should divert all your focus into giving your best performance. Why not to focus on goals? Winners and losers have the same goal. Every applicant wants to get that job, but what differentiates between them? The systems they use to achieve their goals. Achieving the goal is only a momentarily change. Imagine you have a messy room and you set a goal to clean it. The room will be clean, but if you maintain the same sloppy lifestyle, then the room is going to be messy again. Goals restrict our happiness. We constantly tell ourselves that if I achieve this goal, then I will be happy. This goal-first mentality creates an either-or conflict. Either I achieve this goal and become successful, or I fail and become a disappointment. A systems-first mentality allows you to find happiness in the process, not the outcome. What happens after you finish? The purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of setting systems is to keep playing the game. In general, goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress. The reason you've had the same bad habits for so long isn't because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong system for change. We always ask ourselves, why is it so easy to repeat bad habits, and so difficult to form good ones? Changing your habits is challenging. Many people focus on what they want to achieve, the outcomes. But the best way to change your habits is to focus on the person you want to become, instead of the results you want. We try to change the wrong thing. Identities are more important than outcomes. Having identity-based habits is the ultimate form of motivation. The habits you want to form become part of your identity. The goal is not to read a book, it's to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon, it's to become a runner. The change in building identity-based habits is gradual. It won't happen overnight. The most practical way to change who you are is to change what you do. Now let's tackle the last part of this book. And this will not only help put you on the right path to build better habits, but to break bad habits as well. But before that, let's understand why your brain builds habits. The habit loop. Habit is a behavior that has been repeated enough times that it becomes automatic. Habits are made in 4 simple steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. This is the feedback loop of habit formation. The 4 laws of behavior change. Whenever you want to change your behavior, ask yourself these 4 questions. How can I make it obvious? How can I make it attractive? How can I make it easy? How can I make it satisfying? The first law, make it obvious. Most of your habits are so automatic that you don't even notice them. You must first be aware of your habits before you can change them. You have to start setting a time and a place for practicing that habit. Use the formula: I will, behavior, at, time, in, location. This acts as a cue. For example, instead of saying I will start reading more, say, I will read for 30 minutes in my bed before going to sleep. Habit stacking. This is when you pair a new habit with an existing habit. Therefore, the existing habit becomes a cue for the new habit. The inversion of the first law. One of the most practical ways to eliminate bad habits is to reduce exposure to the cue that causes it. The second law, make it attractive. To increase the chances of behavior change occurring, then you have to make it attractive. What is craving? The second part of the habit loop. It is the dopamine-driven feedback loop. Whenever an action seems rewarding, your levels of dopamine rise just by anticipating it. It is the anticipation of a reward that gives us the burst of motivation. Thinking about a vacation is more enjoyable than the actual vacation. The craving is what causes us to act in the first place. Temptation bundling is a strategy that pairs an action you need to do with an action you want to do. If you find yourself needing to exercise more than you already do, you can bundle that action with watching Netflix, something you want to do, while exercising. It's like a 2-in-1 deal. The inversion to the second law. Every behavior we do has a level of craving and an underlying motive. Your habits are solutions to desires. For one person, they smoke to relieve stress, while for another they go for a run. So, your current habits may not be necessarily the best way to solve problems, they're just methods you learn. Habits are attractive when they are associated with positive feelings. So, we can reverse that and highlight the consequences of bad habits to make them unattractive. The third law, make it easy. It is human nature to follow the law of least effort. We will naturally find ourselves heading towards the option that requires the least amount of work. If you want to go to the gym more, it'll be easier to stick to doing so if the gym is on your way to work. When friction gets low, your habits are easy. The 2-minute rule states, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. You'll find that nearly any habit can be watered down to a 2-minute version. Reading before bed each night becomes reading 1 page. This idea to make your habits as easy as possible so it seems doable. The inversion of the third law. To make something more difficult, think about how you can make it as impractical as possible. Create as many obstacles as possible and restrictions between you and your bad habits. For example, if you want to spend less money, leave your credit cards at home when you are leaving the house. The final law, make it satisfy. The first 3 laws increase the chances of doing a habit. The last law is to ensure that you repeat the habit. We are more likely to repeat a behavior when the experience and the results are satisfying. It is best to add instant pleasure to the habits to keep doing them. This can be done by keeping track of your progress using visual methods, marking an X on a calendar. The inversion to the fourth law. We are less likely to repeat a bad habit if it provides painful and unsatisfying results immediately. You can arrange with friends to be held accountable to keep your good habits going. For example, every time you miss a workout, you owe your friend $10. That way you lose $10 in respect from failing to do something that you said you will. Building a good new habit is always rewarding. What is the new habit you will start today? Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on the notification button for more videos like this.